Hey folks, it's Bob out here at Sorrento Hill. Uh, I'm out in the woods behind the house right now. It's kind of pretty. Back there behind me, you can see the house. But what I'm doing today, since I've used up um, all my dried logs, I've got some that's down about 18%. Give it this time next week, and it'll be down to where I need it to be, uh, moisture-wise, to where it's safe to use in the house. If the wood's got too much moisture in it, as the wood dries, it shrinks, not in length, but it shrinks in circumference, in diameter. And so if you put wood in your house that's in these cordwood walls, if you put the wood in that's got too much moisture in it, as it continues to dry, it'll shrink and you'll end up with gaps around your mortar. And you can get air infiltration there and bugs and everything. So it's important that you let the wood get down dry enough. Down around 12% is near ideal. So it's got a little ways to go. And I'm out here today, um, standing on the area where it's going to be my fence, and I'd put up some string to mark the route, and you can see it's pretty wooded through here. And this is about, probably about 25, 30 feet back behind the house. And you could see my garage building back there. And the fence is going to come back a little ways from the garage building, straight across back past the house, and then down to the east. And it's going to incorporate the area where we're going to have the garden. I thought about going smaller on the fence and having the garden outside, but I like the idea of having the garden area inside the fence where the dogs are, because the deer stay away from the area where the dogs are all the time. So hopefully by them being able to be out around the garden area, um, I won't have to deal as much with the deer problem. And hopefully they'll scare off my armadillo too. I got an armadillo out here that's been, boy, he's been doing some digging like crazy. So what I got to do here is, I've had some stuff fall down and break my cord, so I've got to figure out where it's broken and re reestablish my route. And there's a lot of, you can see all kinds of small trees and stuff like that that's going to be in the way of my fence. So I've got my trusty sawzall out here. Got my sawzall out here with this trusty wicked looking blade. This is a Diablo. I was actually red at one point, but I've worn all the red off. But this is a pruning blade, and it's got carbide tip blades, and you can actually plunge this down below the ground. So, like for instance, I got this little tree right here. I'll plunge this down in the ground underneath the ground, and I'll cut this off below ground level so it won't be in my way. But that way I can start getting this route cleared for my fence and start putting fence posts in. But this thing is really cool. And I've cut down trees up to 4 inches in diameter with this thing, and it goes through them pretty quick. And that's a little hickory tree. So I'll cut these things down, and but I'm not going to burn these. The ones that are ones that are real small, why I'll use those to I'll run those through the wood chipper and make those into compost. But I've got this one right here, like this, that I'll be having to cut down. It's got this neat little crook in it, and what I'll do is I'll cut it just when I after I cut it down, I'll cut it just here, and and use this crook as a handhold, and this thing will be perfect size to make a neat little walking stick. So I'll be able to make a hickory walking stick to sell at the craft fair. And the rest of his smaller stuff that I'll be having to cut out of here, why that'll end up being compost. And I've got here I can see an old dead tree that I'm going to have to cut down because that thing will be down on my fence. And down here I've got this log that's been on the ground. It's half decomposed. I'll have to get the rest of it out of the way. So anyways, that's what I'm up to today, doing some clearing here and reestablishing my route so I know exactly where to clear. So without further ado, let me figure out what I've got going on here. See where this break. Yeah, had some stuff fall down on it and break it. I'll get my string tied back up here and stretched out, and then I'll know exactly where I need to go on my clearing. Yeah. Boy, it's tangled up in everything. That's the fun part of trying to do something in the woods. It's nothing's very clear, and I can see why it's broken. There's all kinds of stuff that's fallen down. All right. Well, I've got my string strung back up, and I can see lots of stuff I'm going to have to cut down. And I'll start with this one right here. And like I said, I'll just plunge the sawzall in the ground. And there she goes. All right. Got that one down. As you see, now when I cut that one off underneath the ground, there's a root going off in one direction that cut through too. That's why it took a little bit longer. But the sawzall is kind of handy because it's not near as heavy as a chainsaw. And if you're using a chainsaw, you get a chainsaw into the dirt, it'll dull it so fast, it's not even funny. So this thing is designed for it. I don't have to worry about it. And if I do mess it up, these only cost about $4 or $5 a piece, and they last a good long while. So off I go, cut down some more of this stuff, get this way clear. This is about 100 feet, and then I've got about 120 feet towards the east that I've got to do next, and then just a little bit out of the woods, or to get out of the woods into where it's already clear. So that's the fun of putting the fence up in the woods. But this area, this way, like I said, it's an area around the house the dogs will be able to get to. Hopefully that'll keep the the critters out, and most importantly, keep the deer away from where we're going to be putting the garden. All right, so get the sun behind me. Wow. So anyways, here it is. I'm back out here in the woods behind the house, and I've got fence posts in. I don't know if you can see them too well. Oh, I got a couple that are crooked. But I put my first I got my first wooden pole in, and then I put in a bunch of the metal posts, the T-post. These are fun to drive in when you've got that hard clay and rock underneath. And then I'm out here with my trusty Sawzall, because I had to cut down some of these small trees to make way for the fence, and most of them are hickory. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to harvest some of those. Um, I've got several here that'll got enough length that they'll make two or three decent walking sticks, and I'll clean the bark off those, and I'll take those out to the farmers market on Saturday, see if I can get $10 for them. So I'll clean the bark off and sand them up, put some polyurethane on them, and see if people are interested in buying some walking sticks. And I've got some that are kind of interesting, got some neat little crooks that will make a nice handhold, so that should be interesting. But there's a little thing I do when I'm putting my T-posts in, and I don't know if this is right, wrong, indifferent, whatever. I put a level on them to try to get them straight. I guess what you call front to back, which would be the side that in my mind anyway, is the side that the fence is going to be attached to. But then left to right, what I do is I'll have them off a little bit from straight, and by that what I mean is um, instead of it sticking straight up, I'll have them lean over to the side, probably about half an inch. And what I do, like on this one right here, this is not perfectly vertical side to side. And what I've done is I've actually got it leaning a little bit away from the direction that I'm going to be putting my installing my fencing, so that what'll happen is as I go to install my fence, and I'll try to hold my camera as vertical as possible. So this leans a little bit this way, and I'm installing my fence from this direction. So what I'll do is, as I'm attaching my T-posts, my clips on my fence, I'll pull this post so that it's leaning the opposite direction here, install the clip on it, and then when I let go, it's going to try to go back to its lean that way, but with the fence it's going to actually end up straight. And so what it does is I use the fence posts then to kind of keep some tension on the fence and help me tighten my fence up and keep it tight. Like I said, I don't know if that's the right way to do them, the wrong way to do them. That's just how I do them when I put these fences in. And I did that 3 years ago on the fence that we put in around the first area we fenced around, where the RV and the garage is, and then up towards the road, give the dogs a nice big run area. And that fence, it's good and snug. And a tight fence is a good fence, because if your fence is loose, critters can push against it and find some weak spots and get some movement in it, and then kind of get out from under. And I use the woven wire. Welded wire is cheaper, and welded wire might work good in some situations. But the problem I had with welded wire where we were before is after a few years, some of those welds tend to pop. And our lab, she's a pretty smart dog, and where those welds had popped, she kind of tests them, and where some of those welds had popped or she saw it was loose, if she can get her head through the hole, she will get her whole body through. And she would get out and start roaming around the neighborhood and all that. And and it's funny, I always knew when she was out running, it had gotten outside the fence, because our other dog, Leo, he would be barking frantically, and he would be standing there at the back door barking. He'd be all upset because he was alone back there. She wasn't in there. So I could always tell by the way Leo acted. There's Leo back over there. You can see him sniffing around behind the laundry shed. But I could always tell by the way Leo was acting when Maggie had gotten out. And then I'd have to go and patch a place in the fence, because sure enough, some of those welds had popped, and she'd figured it out, and she figured out how to get through them. She can't do that with the woven wire, and I don't think she likes it as much. But at any rate, the woven wire fence is more expensive, but it's more durable, and so that's what I choose to use. And so yeah, and it, man, I tell you, I used an auger. I've got an auger, um, gas powered auger, and I used it to dig holes. So far, I've put in 2 posts. I've got half a dozen more to put in. But this ground here, um, it's been so dry here. It's just dry and powdery. Um, but and it's so hard. The clay underneath there, that you've got several inches where you've got all these leaves that have fallen over the years. So we get several inches, probably about 3 inches or so. That's got a lot of organic material in it. It's fairly loose and fluffy. But you get down below that, and you get into this sandy clay stuff, and man, that stuff is just packed hard, and it's just and it's almost like powder when it comes up. And then you get down to a certain level, and this area behind the house and up, oh, about 2/3 of a way the width of the house, the hard pan that's in this area, that hard pan is only about a foot and a half below the surface. You get a little bit further down the hill, and it's 3, 4, 5 feet below the surface. But up here, it's about a foot and a half below the surface. And I tell you, that auger, it hits that hard pan, and man, it just sits there and bounces on it. It just, instead of digging, it just kind of polishes the clay. And so I end up with a bar, or my little sharpshooter trouble, or a like a railroad bar in there, piece of rebar that I've put a point on. It's not really railroad bars; those are good and heavy, but a bar that I've got that I can bust it up with, and kind of bust the rocks up in order to get the auger to work. So it's a lot of down, up and down and up and down with the auger. But I don't know if that's any easier than trying to use a shovel, but that's part of the challenge. And of course, I always have to have my Sawzall with me, because every hole that I've tried drilling around here, I've ended up having to cut roots out of. And if you've ever used an auger and you hit a root, man, that hurts, because as soon as you hit that auger bit, if it gets a good hold on it, it wants to stop right now. And if the auger stopped, well, the head wants to turn. And so fortunately, it's got a, when it jerks and you let go of it, why the trigger, lets go of the trigger, and so the clutch disengages, it quits spinning on you. So it's not like when you see on America's Funniest Home Videos, where someone's got an auger head that's just sitting there spinning around and round and round and round and round and won't stop. When you let your finger off the trigger, why it goes into idle, and the clutch disengages and it quits turning. But it hurts like heck when you hits that root or that rock, and the auger bit wants to stop. So just some of the challenges of being out in the woods here, doing stuff out in the woods. You got roots, you got rocks, and the ground doesn't like having holes put in it, but so it's a challenge. But I guess once they're in, they're going to be in good. All right, well, let me get going with this sawzall, and I will get these things cut up, and so I can take them over and knock the bark off of them. And later this week, I'll show you my collection of walking sticks that I've made. And we are going to the farmers market this week. I think I'll go ahead and do some video there at the farmers market to share with you guys. Some of the different vendors, and I just found out this morning it's a good thing we're planning on going this week, because we're going to be the spotlight vendor, so hopefully that'll draw a little bit more business our way. This is one of the projects that I knew I had to get done, and I'd been kind of putting off. It's cooler now. Temperatures are down in the 70s instead of in the mid to upper 90s. It's a lot better weather for putting the fence in, and I'm waiting for wood to dry. I've got a bunch of logs that are down around 16%, and so they got 4% more to go before they're dry enough to put in the walls. And so while I'm waiting for those logs to dry, working on fence, working on some things to sell at the farmers market, and tomorrow I'll be going out and cutting some more trees. Um, this afternoon, it's part of the reason why I'm harvesting these trees to use for making walking sticks, is I'm going to be firing up the pressure washer this afternoon and cleaning bark off the last of the logs from my last 3 trips out to cut logs. I get those all finished up, and that way I have a nice place to dump more logs when I go out this week and cut more logs. Also, got to stop by the sawmill and get me another batch of sawdust that I put in the mortar, because I've got enough sawdust for probably 3 or 4 batches of mortar, and then that'll be gone. This will, man, those bugs, they try to go right in your nose or mouth. Um, this will be my third truckload of sawdust, and I just go up there and he uses his end loader and just fills it up to the top, and uh, and then I head home and unload it. Again, thanks for stopping by. We appreciate the time you spend checking out our videos and seeing what we've got going. And don't be afraid to get out there and do something you've never done before. You might just like it, and you might actually end up being good at it. Well, this is Bob. Thanks for stopping by, and we will talk to you on the next one. Bye now.